Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today I want to talk about a poem that I read because it is Poetry Thursday. A lovely day to share my experiences with some wonderful poetry. And I wanted to revisit an old poet that I've talked about on this channel before. Certainly one of my favorite poets. And it is a poem about a conversation in the bathroom. I am referring to Cut While Shaving by Charles Bukowski. For those who don't know, Charles Bukowski is an American author, noted for writing quite a bit of poetry, as well as memoirs and some nonfiction here and there, which I haven't encountered yet, but I hope to do so in the future. He lived throughout the 1900s, and I would say the school that he was closely associated with, but as I've noted many times before, he probably wouldn't lay claim to that is the Confessionalist school, like Sylvia Plath and other authors of the words and whatnot. But I don't think he would lay claim to that because I don't think he liked to be categorized in such a manner. Many poets don't like to be categorized in such a manner, but we got to categorize them. Otherwise, what is this all for? What is the human experience if not a great effort to categorize and catalog everything? And he's one of my favorite authors. And just to note, of course, like he has been accused of sexism and misogyny in his writings, which I don't think he's ever denied. Certainly a little iffy at times in his views towards women, but he's dead now, so we cannot cancel him, unfortunately. Not that I was going to. That's just a joke. But without further ado, let's talk about Cut While Shaving. I will read it, and do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. Cut While Shaving. It's never quite right, he said, the way people look, the way the music sounds, the way the words are written. It's never quite right, he said, all the things we are taught, all the loves we chase, all the deaths we die, all the lives we live. They are never quite right, they are hardly close to right. These lives we live, one after the other, piled there as history, the waste of the species, the crushing of the light and the way. It's not quite right. It's hardly right at all, he said. Don't I know it, I answered. I walked away from the mirror. It was morning. It was afternoon. It was night. Nothing changed. It was locked in place. Something flashed. Something broke. Something remained. I walked down the stairway and into it. So that was Cut While Shaving in terms of analysis. There's a little bit worth talking about here. In terms of narrative, I think it's easy to see what story he's telling with this poem. He's talking about not feeling normal, not feeling like the world is in a right place. Everything kind of feels off. And apparently he's saying that, as we learn later in the poem, to himself in the mirror, and he answers himself like, don't I know it? And then he walks away and presumably either falls down the stairs or hits something. He's not having a very good time. Or you can interpret this as him just saying, I walked down the stairway and into it, with into it meaning life. He just walks back into life, the weird absurdity of it all. So I think this is one of those examples of a poem, and I've talked about a few of these on my channel before, but a poem where it doesn't make sense until you get to the second half of the poem, and it's kind of like a punchline or something like that. This one, it feels a bit like a joke, because in the first verse he's like, it's not quite right. It's never right. Everything feels wrong. And then you find out he's talking to himself in the mirror. And it also, like, based on the title, it says cut while shaving. So you could interpret this as something going wrong for him in the morning, and he's just like, this world is so weird. I don't like it. It's terrible. I cut myself while shaving. I feel awful, and everything is awful. So it could just be you cut yourself while shaving, and you view the world in a negative light that day. Does Bukowski really feel that way? Maybe not. You could interpret that way as a joke, but another way you could see this is Bukowski, or the narrator, gets up in the morning, looks in the mirror, doesn't like what he sees, is feeling a great deal of anxiety or depression or depersonalization with the world. It just feels out of sync to him, and like, he says that, and then also the person in the mirror, which is supposed to be him, answers, "Don't I know it? I answered." So there's two people talking here, but it's actually one. And I think that adds to the depersonalization, where the world feels out of sync, including yourself. Like, you could, I think Bukowski might be saying that, like, you can choose to, like, you can choose to wallow in the derealization, but like him, you just walk down the stairway and into it. You just go back to life. Sure, it feels weird, but what else are you gonna do? Like, you got to go on living. Unfortunately, you gotta make your way into the world, and sometimes it's just gonna feel off. So I think this is maybe a weirdly hopeful poem, but it's also kind of sad because of what the narrator is experiencing at this time. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Cut While Shaving. Very interesting and an unusual poem, which I've come to expect from Bukowski. He writes these sort of jarring, kind of confrontational or bizarre type poems with structure that sort of gets you to confront some pretty sad realities. He often writes about being a writer in and of itself, but sometimes he just goes in this direction and really challenges the reader, which is why I am such a fan of him. I definitely recommend that you read this one, so I will put a link to it in the description. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let's have a discussion about Bukowski. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poem, Poetry Thursday, or even our Discord if people want to join and talk about books. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and bathroom grooming travels. Farewell.